All right, so you caught some trout and you don't have a clue what to do with them. So today we're going to do some experiments and try to find out exactly what you should do with them. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take these trout that have already been field dressed at Creekside, and they are partially frozen at the moment. So we are going to try to address that because we're going to try to smoke these fish today. And if we cut along the spine here, it's kind of hard to see, but basically the width of the dorsal fin on the back is the width of where you want to cut for the spine. Now, if you filleted fish, that's basically the same path that you're going to take down through here, all the way along there. The only difference is what I'm doing today is I am going to get to the end of the ribs here, and I'm going to go through the vent and slice this all the way down and take that off right at the tail. So that's a partial fillet right here. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. One thing I enjoy is watching like cooking videos on YouTube and then going down to the comment section and seeing how many people make comments about how the person used the knife and cut towards themselves and how nervous it made them and everything, which I think is kind of funny because, you know, it's not like that's ever happened to me one time, but they can't gauge how much pressure the person's using, so I suppose it's more scary if you're watching. So anyway, I'm going to follow along the spine with the knife and cut through the skin here right at the end. I think it's probably nearly impossible to always cut away from yourself, but if you're using a lot more pressure, then I suppose that's good practice. All right, so now we have these two little mini fillets here on the end. And the only meat that we're going to end up missing is this little bit right here on the tail. So what we're trying to do is maximize the amount of meat that we're going to get out of this fish. So this is the experiment that we're going to do. We're going to come over here to the sink, and we're going to put hot water in the sink until it covers up the fish by a couple inches. So if you've never seen a fish in a sink before with water running into it, now you have. So the first thing I did was I ran this water until it became hot. And I'm not going to add any heat to this. I'm just going to use the temperature of the water itself. And the first part of my experiment is to try to determine how much time I have to let the fish soak in this hot water before the meat releases from the bones. So that is experiment number one, and once we figure that out, then we can get all of those rib bones out and all that rib meat without having to waste any additional meat. That is the goal. So we're going to see if that works. All right, I'm going to catch up to you as soon as I got these suckers soaking for a while and I can start to debone. All right, here's our water starting out at 120 degrees F. Water in the sink. One fish. Let the experiment begin. All right, we are at the 10-minute mark. So the water temperature has dropped to 115 degrees. I'm going to take the fish here and very gently with a fork, I'm going to straddle each side of the ribs. And I actually did this a little bit on the fish a little bit earlier because I was checking it to see when it was going to get close to the right temperature. right, so we got one. And two. So it looks like I pretty much got all of the fillet out there without wasting hardly any meat at all. So pretty happy with that. Now, a lot of people will want to like soak their fish in like a brine solution before they do the smoking. So the fact that they're wet, I don't think really is going to interfere with the process. So the only meat that we missed here is just whatever meat is right here on the spine. And there's another layer of bones that come down right through here besides the rib bones, and it was able to remove all of those as well. So this meat is a little bit more stuck on here for this set of bones going down the middle of the spine. But typically when you see a fillet, when people do a trout fillet, they'll cut these ribs out and your piece of meat just ends up being about that big. And I don't know, you go through a lot of time and expense to go catch fish. You want to be able to eat as much of the meat as you can. So we got a fairly big fillet off of a, you know, medium-sized fish. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that technique. I'm not gonna do any fillets. If you want to see fillets, you can watch tons of videos on how to do fillets. So I'm gonna continue on and go ahead and prep all these off camera, and then we'll pick it up from there. I'm gonna try to do 4 fish at a time now to kind of try to speed things up. The temperature's already dropped down to 115 and it's only been a couple minutes. And I added some hot water from the stove to bring it back up to 120. But at the end of the process, I'm gonna try to land at about 115. So it should be 220 degrees, it looks like, to start with, for right at about 10 minutes, depending on how frozen your fish is when you get started. And it was kind of like it had about the same amount of ice in there as like a slushy or whatever, so it wasn't completely frozen. You could bend the fish. But I have tried this with actual fresh fish that had not been frozen before, and I've tried it with frozen, but that's how I found out that this worked, because I accidentally was thawing out the fish, getting ready to cook them, and noticed that the meat was already falling off the bones. So I got to skip a step. But anyway, we're gonna go ahead and wait another 7 minutes here, it looks like. I'm dropping down to about 111, but I've already got some steaming hot water on the stove, so I'm gonna keep balancing that out till the temperature stays in between 115 and 120. All right, this is where the magic happens. We had close to 20 minutes on the last fish that was in there. Some of them are still sticking a little bit right down the center line. And so I had to very gently get in there with a fork to try to separate it. One way to be able to kind of tell when your blanching process is done is that the tails will fall off. Also, you can take the fins and just kind of pinch them between your fingers, and it'll slip the bones right out of the meat. Okay, so for the next step, we've got some onion powder. And some people, whoa, that's a lot. Some people mix this all up and then apply it. I'm just gonna shake it on. And then a lot of people do a marinate for 24 hours. I don't have 24 hours. This is happening now. So we're gonna find out if it works. And I got a little garlic salt. A touch of that in there. I worked for an Italian guy for a while, and he would make me lunch every day. And he used a lot of garlic and a lot of olive oil and stuff. And oh my gosh, he was such a good cook. And I ended up still working for him even when I wasn't getting paid right, just because he made lunch every day. So that's the power of garlic. It can make people do amazing things. Then one of my personal favorites is Lowry seasoning salt. I grew up on this stuff, and sometimes that's the only spice I had in the house. And it just seems like it goes with everything. It really seems to bring the flavor out. I don't know if it's got loaded with MSG or something or what, but it does something to my mind. It brings me back to childhood memories and fishing trips that I was on, hunting trips. All right, so then I've got some brown sugar. This stuff is so weird. It feels kind of like sand, you know, when you're a little kid playing in the sandbox. Kind of makes me feel like a little kid again. You probably never played in the sand because you had that bully down the street that would come beat you up if he caught you out there. So you've probably repressed all those memories of happiness that you used to have. But that's okay. We're going to start new memories. We're going to bring them back out and make life great again. So there may be a more sophisticated method of doing this. And I have seen people do both sides, do the skin side and do the flesh side, and then they flip it over and do all that. But by the time we got done with the blanching, this stuff is kind of a little bit on the mushy side. So I don't want to play with it any more than I absolutely have to. Who knows what made it into here. So I'm trying to make sure everything holds together, and again, because of my timeline, what is this, like caramelized brown sugar or something? Because I'm trying to get this done in the next 3 hours. Because I got somebody coming over for lunch, and I wanted to test out my new recipe on somebody that won't lie to me. Because he's a pastor, and so he can't lie to me. Always have at least one person in your life that will not lie to you. No matter how hurtful their opinion may be. Sometimes your enemies will tell you things that you'd have to pay your friends a lot of money and still not get the information completely out of them. Your critics can be your best friend sometimes. You just don't even realize it. That doesn't mean you have to leave a bunch of complaints down in the comment section. Oh, you can if you want to. It lets me know that you're thinking about it, which is fine. The biggest complaints that I've gotten is that my videoing is horrendous, and that's because I'm trying to do it by myself. That's an excuse, not a reason. And that I breathe too much while I'm making videos, and part of the reason for that is because when I was in the Marine Corps and as a young child growing up, I got in a lot of fights, and I had my nose crushed multiple times. One time with a baseball bat, and they had to do surgery on it and remove most of the inside of my nose, but I still have problems with it. It did not cure everything. So what I'm doing now is just add a little bit more salt. Salt and meat kind of go together for the curing process. And I'm hoping that'll help to draw a little bit more of that moisture out of that fish to the surface too. So the next thing that you want to do is you want to let this stuff dry. Because you don't want to put it in wet. It needs to have, the proteins need a chance to mix with the oxygen and form kind of a tacky, sticky surface. And that would typically take about 2 hours, but I'm gonna try to either set it outside in the sun if there's not too many flies, or I'm going to stick a fan on it to help that process out a little bit. But like I said, this is gonna be rushed, so I don't have 2 hours to completely let it dry. But that's what I would do under ideal circumstances. So next thing I need to do is go prep the smoker and get it ready. And then the fish is ready for the recipe. All right. I pulled out the smoker racks and washed them with one of these stainless steel scrubby things, which works really good. If you are anything like me, you didn't clean it last time you used it before you put it away. So anyway, once you get rid of the mosquito larvae down in the tank and everything and scrub that all out, you can get your racks out, clean them, and spray them with a little bit of cooking spray. And the racks are ready to go. And I put the fish in the oven to try to speed up the drying process a little bit at 175 degrees. So we'll see if that just makes them sweat oil or if that actually dries them up a bit. I think here in a second, after I get the racks established, I'm just gonna put them on the racks to go ahead and finish drying, and then start the smoker when they're sufficiently dry. All right, next thing we're gonna do here, take this nice mighty piece of oak, and we're going to cut it into 1-inch pieces. Shut this off so I don't kill myself. Well, we're back. And we're trying something new. So I got a head of cabbage here and peeling off some leaves. I'm gonna throw these on the top of the grill so that we're going to find out if the cabbage leaves will keep the fish from sticking. And it's also a food item, so that's not going to hurt it any. Seems like this gets harder to do the closer you get to the center of the cabbage. So first one went pretty easy. I thought, well, shoot, I guess I can just film that and show people what it's all about. Then I started demoing a cabbage. Next thing you know, everything slows down to a grinding halt. YouTube algorithm goes off the chain because people are clicking off. They want to watch their cat videos. It's tragic. All right, but you get the general idea. What's going on here? And it tastes delicious. Okay. So for my next trick, I'm going to remove this fish, which looks like it really didn't want to dry out much at all. That's kind of what I was afraid of. But lunch is quickly approaching, so hey, we've got to do what we can here. Another problem I found with the fish is it really has a tendency to want to break apart sometimes and fall through the slots in the rack. So we're going to try to eliminate that fiasco. Almost looks good enough to eat, doesn't it? I wonder if these fish know they're this delicious. I'm going to fill up the last one, and I'll meet you out by the smoker. So we're setting out with the unit on high there. See, I've got a flame going. I got water in the water reservoir, evaporator deal. And then I got the wood chips in there. If I wanted to, I could wet some down too. One thing I like about wood chips is they're exactly what they claim to be. You know, it's not like old news or something like that where it's like, well, if it's old, it's not new. But not wood chips. They're basically just chips of wood. So we got our smoker flying there, and I've got this piece of conduit that I ran down in here. I'm still playing around with it so I can keep this just above the level of the water. And then I'm gonna put a bubbler on top of their little water reservoir so that when that level drops down, it'll automatically fill that up like a siphon. I haven't got that done yet, so I'll close this baby up and keep an eye on the temperature, and I'll let you know what the temperature is here in a little bit. And I think the temperature of the fish that we're shooting for is like 145 degrees. So as soon as it gets to that stage, it is cooked. So we're gonna see 10 o'clock now. So I got about 2 hours. That should be about the right amount of time. Finish smoking it up. So all right, we're ready. All right, quick update here. It's been about 45 minutes and our smoker is hovering right at about 200 degrees. It's about ambient temperature outside, maybe a little closer to 80. I have the gauge set at high. I've got smoke coming out the top, and we're gonna take a quick peek to see what's going on the inside. So looks a little bit more moist than what I would have liked because I didn't give it a chance to dry amply, but it looks like my wood chips are doing great, and I may need to add a little bit more water here in a little bit, but so far so good. Man, I just love wood chips, man. They are what they say they are. Chips of wood. So beautiful. We're back here in the kitchen and we're trying to get some fish grease on our phone. So we've accomplished that, and I'm making a little fish leftover pate, because if you just throw all this stuff in the garbage can, then your dog gets into it and it stinks, and then you have a bunch of flies. And then the kids come home and they're like, "What's that smell?" And then you tell them that it's probably their t-shirt from gym class that they didn't wash. They don't believe you, but you tried. It actually was their t-shirt from gym class. All right. Do they even have gym class anymore? I don't even know if they educate kids at all anymore. All right. So here we go. There's really something quite beautiful about that. Okay, on to the next step. All right, look who's hungry. But we're not gonna feed it to him. No, we're gonna do a magic trick, actually. We're gonna do something very amazing and magical. Are you ready for the magic? All right, here's the magic part right here. Watch this. Start out with fish, and it turns into eggs. Check that out. Voila. Thank you, my little helpers. Okay, it has been an hour and 40 minutes. The smoker is holding steady at 200 degrees. But we're missing something. And I think you know what it is. Yep, it's a caveat. All right, here comes the caveat. So, to all the naysayers that said that you need to let that meat dry a certain amount of time, I don't see any problem with that. Perfectly smoked piece of trout right there. So we're gonna go ahead and I flipped that from the bottom up to the top. But if you notice, the water is running to the low side there. So I'm gonna just add a dash more in there, and I think the dry heat really did the trick on that to get everything back to where it needed to be and start getting that smoke to soak in there. So I'm gonna throw some water in and give her the next 20 minutes to reach perfection.
It is gorgeous.
Perfection.
Absolutely amazing.
All right, taste it.
Okay.
Tell me honestly, what do you think?
You know what? That is the best smoked trout I've had in a long time.
All right.
Now, it's also the only smoked trout I've had in a long time, but it is great.
All right, it is time for a quick review of what we have learned. Now, first of all, if you's coming to the interwebs and you's talking to me, trying to figure out how to smoke your fish, then you don't know what you're doing. But that's okay. A lot of folks don't know what they're doing in life. It's okay to ask for help. Just like the Indians asked Columbus when they all come over on the Mayflower for help on how to live in America. And they formed the Washington Redskins. And they were a pretty good team back in the 80s. So anything's possible, really. You just have to put your mind to it. Just don't be scared to try. So basically, what we've learned is that smoking is not just for the boys' room. No, smoking is for out in the backyard after you've caught trout. That's right. So you catch a trout, chuck them in the smoker. It's going to work out great. Those were actually some awesome fish. I feel like I'm a different man today after eating them, if you know what I'm saying. So anyway, I want you to all have enjoyable fish recipes, and if you have any particular fish recipes or any ideas in your head that you'd like to share with the world, there's a little comment section down below, and you can leave your ideas there. Thanks for watching.